Hello, good morning, Chicago. Welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast here in the UK, guys. My name's Owen James, and I'm bringing you all your latest Bears news here on Sunday, the 20th of April. Yes, happy Easter to all of those who celebrate. It is Easter Sunday, guys, one of the holiest days of the year. So, obviously, like I said, hope you have a great day with your friends, family. Happy Easter to all of those of you in the Chicago area, in Illinois, and all over the United States and the world who are Bears fans and are celebrating Easter today. Right, we're going to talk a little bit about the Bears, the organization. We're going to talk a bit how we're going to talk about how we're going to not only use the draftees to get this franchise to where it needs to be, but how the coaching staff and the GM have really kind of indicated that they want more out of the players they've got, as well as obviously going in and adding, as they've done through free agency, and adding through the draft, and how certain players have more of a role to play this year, and how those players are going to really benefit the Bears this year. We'll also talk the latest on Braxton Jones and his recovery from injury. We'll get through all of that in this morning's video. Right, guys, well, look, let's start off with a bit of Braxton Jones news. Look, Braxton Jones is on. He is starting to recover from that horrible ankle injury that he got. Apparently, his recovery is going well. It is steady, and he is slowly improving. He is training with the team. He is taking part to some extent. However, it is said that this recovery from this ankle injury could well take beyond training camp, which obviously will be a bit of a setback for the Bears now as they seek to build that offensive line. Now, obviously, the Bears have invested very heavily in that offensive line over this off-season period so far. With the acquisitions that they've made on that O-line already, the likes obviously of Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, absolute quality adding in to obviously Darnell Wright, who we're hoping to get more from this year. But obviously the news that Braxton Jones is out, may appear to indicate that either two things will happen. Either Kieran Amagadaji, I can't say his name, I apologise, or there'll be someone drafted maybe to come in and play that left tackle spot. Now, look, Braxton Jones obviously is one who seems to kind of divide fan opinion. There are those who believe that he will, with time and coaching, get to where we need him to be. Others who believe that Braxton Jones is not the man at left tackle, and that maybe moving for someone in the draft like an Armand Membu, like a Kelvin Banks Jr., even possibly a Josh Simmons if he's overcome that injury, may be the answer at left tackle. But something needs to be obviously put into place as soon as possible, because moving into the off-season workouts, non-voluntary ones, obviously they're moving into training camp. We need to start to put together that offensive line, develop a cohesiveness that Dan Rauschar can kind of form amongst that O-line. So, like I said, Braxton Jones, even though that recovery is proceeding, it isn't perhaps going as fast as the Bears may wish it to go, and there may be the situation where he will not be available for the start of training camp, which obviously will put him behind in his preparation for the new season. And like I said, it's all about developing a cohesion on that offensive line. I mean, personally speaking, I've heard all the talk about, the Mason Grahams, the Ashton Genties, the Tyler Warrens possibly dropping to the Bears at 10. I think, looking at and reading more and more into it, I think the likelihood of Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren being there at 10 is very, very slim indeed. I think there is more of a likelihood that, to be perfectly honest with you, that the Bears may go for someone else at that position. I know there's a lot of talk of them going for a skilled position, but a skilled player at that position. But if someone like Armand Membu was available there, I mean, I'd be absolutely running to the podium to take him. This is a guy who could play left tackle, or even play right tackle, and we could slide down or right over to left tackle and build a very effective offensive line for the future. But certainly, this recovery not setback really, but the speed of the recovery could be a concern for the Bears moving forward. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Let me know what you think about Braxton Jones. Do you think he is capable of being the left tackle of the future for the Bears, or do you think he is perhaps little more than a backup, and then obviously once his contract comes to an end, the Bears allow him to go? Now, as I've said, the Bears have put a lot into free agency. That man in the picture there, Ryan Poles, has invested an awful lot in free agency this year. Bringing in some quality players like Drew Dahlman, not just through free agency, through trades as well. There's been a lot of work done through free agency and trades. Joe Dahlman, Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Devin Duvernay, just to name but a few that have come in over this off-season period. So, look, the GM's been working hard. Now, we know that through the draft, we'll add other players, certainly some in those opening positions that will be skilled players and will be positions of need that will come in and will obviously go straight into the starting lineup, plug and play guys. However, one of the things I think there's been the overriding message, when you're listening to Antoine Randall, whether you're listening to Dennis Allen, Ben Johnson, whoever you're listening to, there seems to be a real kind of drive to get more from these players, to really improve what we've got and to see more from the likes of Rome Odunze, Kyler Gordon, Caleb Williams, just to name but three. Now, I'm not saying any of them played badly last season. I'm not saying any of them are terrible. I'm just saying that, they want more from them. They want to see a lot more from them. Now, one of the players that has been very heavily mentioned in recent times by coaches is Rome Odunze, the 9th overall pick in the draft last year. Now, Rome was described by the wide receivers coach and assistant head coach Antoine Randall as the wide receiver 1 in last year's draft. He said, as far as he was concerned, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors were not anywhere near the man that Rome Odunze was, and Odunze was his number 1 in last year's draft. If you look at Odunze's record last season, it's not, it's a very solid start to his Bears career. He started 12 of 17 games that he played. He had 734 yards receiving. He had 101 targets. He had 3 TDs and a 45% catch success rate. But, listening to Antoine Randall, listening to Declan Doyle, listening to Press Taylor, I think there is an overwhelming desire to kind of get more from this guy this year, to really see him kick on and have a tremendous, second year, to really see no sophomore slump, but to see a sophomore increase, a sophomore zoom to the top from Rome Odunze. He is really seen as being someone who can be used in a variety of different positions. Listening to Antoine Randall, he talked about, lining him up in different positions. He talked about getting him to run different routes, getting him to catch screens, getting him, into different positions. He certainly talked about the ability that the lad had, and he thought that this was someone who could go on to be a great success and could be developed into one of the best wide receivers in the league. Now, the Bears have got a somewhat mixed record of developing wide receivers. Certainly success stories like Alshon Jeffrey or Curtis Conway, but on the equal side, you've got disasters like David Terrell, Kevin White, Anthony Miller, who have not perhaps gone the way we would have hoped they would have gone. But there's certainly a hope, I think, with the likes of, obviously, Antoine Randall round and Declan Doyle and Ben Johnson, who are all great offensive minds. And Antoine Randall obviously played wide receiver, played in a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl. Was a guy who did an awful lot in his career as a wide receiver. Can really bring that experience and help Rome to develop. So, I think there's a very strong determination from within the Bears organisation to get the best out of this lad, to see Rome Odunze go on to be one of the league's best wide receivers, and certainly see a lot more out of him in the 2025 season. So, big positive steps forward there with Rome Odunze. And like I said, I've said on multiple videos, actually all the videos that I've done, this is a very positive, very forward-thinking coaching staff, a very can-do, win now, let's do this, let's dominate, let's have swagger, let's have a chip on our shoulder, let's be hyper-competitive, let's be in their faces. A real positive approach. And as I've said on every video, actions speak louder than words. Yes, it's great hearing it now, but obviously once the season kicks off, then we'll see the real Bears. But we can only go on what we're hearing today, and we can be only enthused as fans by what we're hearing from Ben Johnson, Antoine Randall, Dennis Allen, Declan Doyle, etc., etc. Another player they've kind of talked very heavily about in terms of improving and seeing more from this season, obviously, is Kyler Gordon. Seeing him, as I mentioned on the video yesterday, outside corner or at safety, but certainly playing a big part in this season. So not just Rome Odunze you're hearing from. It's also, from Dennis Allen about Kyler Gordon. Kyler Gordon is a talent, isn't he? He's an absolute talent, and having him on the pitch and on the field more is only going to benefit the Bears in the long run. Now, obviously, this man is the key, I think, to obviously getting the best out of the offense, and there's certainly, I think, going to be a desire to get a lot more out of Caleb this year. I've got to say, I've had some comments on the videos, and I've read some comments, and I've got to say the criticism I believe of Caleb Williams is kind of quite unfair. In terms of what people are saying about his character. He's getting fun poked at him, with that comment that he made about going home and crying about defeat, about feeling so physically and mentally beaten up, which he was last season. He was absolutely smashed last season. He was running for his life on a number of occasions. People have criticised him going to Denmark, spending obviously time with his girlfriend in Denmark. He's been heavily criticised, it seems, for everything that he does, and not by everyone, just by some of the fans, a minority really. And I've got to say, I find this ridiculous. I just genuinely do. It was interesting, I think, in that interview that he gave to Esquire magazine, that the reporters stated that during the whole time that he's there, he's got an iPad with him, and what's he doing on the iPad? No, he's not watching Netflix or Amazon Prime or watching YouTube videos. He's watching game tape. He's watching play tape. He's watching and improving what he's doing. It is very much a guy that this guy wants to evolve. He wants to get better, and I think this taking the mickey out of him going home and crying. I think look, if you are kind of laughing at how someone deals with adversity, then I think you need to take a little bit of a look at yourself, a long, hard look at yourself. It shows that the guy cares. The guy genuinely cares. He doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want to get smashed up. He doesn't want to perform badly. He wants to win. He wants to be a success. And I think, criticising him for going home and being upset at the fact that that he's lost games and he's been absolutely smashed about, there's nothing there to take the mickey out of him about. There's nothing out there to really take the piss out of. At the end of the day, that shows he cares. And I don't think he is the first, or he will be the last quarterback that goes home feeling like that after games in the NFL. But look, Caleb Williams has got steps to make. He has got improvements to make in his game. We know that. He's coming off a rookie season. We know that the step up from college to the NFL is huge. But hopefully now that he has a good staff around him, and he has JT Barrett, he has Declan Doyle, he has Press Taylor, he has Ben Johnson, he has guys who speak quarterback, he has guys who can really help him to go from strength to strength. So he's got a better staff surrounding him this year, and the uncertainty's gone, the changing hopefully of the staff is gone, and he hopefully will go on to be successful. Not only that, but we've rebuilt the offensive line, so he's hopefully not going to be running for his life this year like he was last, and hopefully as well, adding to the existing targets that he's got, the DJ Moores, the Roma Dunzes, the DeAndre Swifts, the Cole Kmets in this forthcoming draft. Now, I think there's little doubt that the Bears will add a running back in this draft. There is little doubt, I think, that they will add a tight end in this draft. All there, I think, will help Caleb Williams to continue to develop. So I think that, the criticism of Caleb is very unfair. And I think, like I said, people have said, well, what makes you think that he's going to be a success this year? Well, look back on last year. Like I said, better O-line this year gives him protection, gives him a chance to actually go and play. Better staff around him to help him develop, to help him improve than he had last year. Hopefully more targets to go to, more weapons this year by adding to in the draft. Look, yes, it is a make-up rate year. Yes, if he is not successful this year. Yes, if he shows the same weaknesses and failings that he did last year, then maybe we do say that this guy is not the answer. But we've got to give him this season to really go out there and prove himself. And I think, like I've said, we want to see a lot more out of the players they've already got on the roster, as well as obviously adding those players that we've added in free agency through trades and in the draft that we will add come Thursday the 24th of April. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching the Bears Huddle podcast this morning. Happy Easter again to you all. On the way out, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and let's bear down, guys.